Code Vein is a Dark Souls-like game.
I think we've kind of made the Dark Souls of competitive first-person shooters.
But how would that difficulty and overwhelming bleak overworld filled with withered souls, brutish monsters, hellish demons, and blazing dragons translate to a real-world apocalyptic scenario? This week we are discussing the dark and depressing roasting marshmallows on the bonfire, soul-searching praise the sun, the plunging attack is the most reliable move in the game.
I don't even have this game.
Don't touch the paintings, dead on the outside, but not on the inside, hidden path ahead, or not, deadly version of cosplaying, a convoluted but interesting mess of a story, the Dark Souls of, well, Dark Souls, the pinnacle of get good game itself. Today we are telling you why you wouldn't survive Dark Souls' Age of Fire. All corresponding footage comes from full gameplay videos from channels like Rabid Retrospect Games, Gemini Dreamer, and Venero, and big thanks to Wisefish for editing this all together and my old friend Cakeslayer for helping me write this script. Check out their channels in the description or pinned comment below. In the beginning was an era known as the Age of Ancients, where the world as a whole was ravaged and basically controlled by everlasting dragons. The land shrouded in thick fog and riddled with gray crags. These dragons were covered in hardest stone scales, their breath as hot as hell, and their destructive capabilities immeasurable, allowing them to rule unopposed for some time. That was until the birth of the first flame, also known as the advent of fire. From the shadows of this flame emerged the Lord Souls. The four beings who gained untold power from these Lord Souls were known as Nito, the first of the dead, the Witch of Izalith, Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, and the Furtive Pygmy. Nito, the Witch of Izalith, and Gwyn utilized the Lord Souls in different ways to wage war against the onslaught of dragon forces. Nito manifested himself into a vile embodiment of decrepit skeletons strewn together and administered illness, plague, and of course death to cripple the dragon's armies. The Witch of Izalith was able to lead the Witches of Chaos, lending bits of her own souls to her newfound children in order to fight the dragons with hellishly destructive pyromancy. Her use of pyromancy would serve to accidentally create a worsened world later on. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, being able to manipulate and control light, and to an advanced extent, lightning and electricity. His shocking nature was not his only redeeming quality, as he was able to amass an army of humans, while also siding with Seath the Scaleless, a dragon that defected and betrayed its own kind. And last of the Lord Souls being the Furtive Pygmy, who wielded the Dark Soul, an entity not of complete power, but of general creation. By fragmenting this Dark Soul, the Furtive Pygmy was able to create the human race. Although he probably did not participate in the war against the dragons, the newly born men and women fought as soldiers who created arms and armor that drew power from the dark flame. This version of humanity, however, is quite different from our own human race. Every human has a fragment from the Dark Soul called humanity. Now for some differences, humans and Dark Souls can have various sizes and different physical appearances. But unlike the gods, they are much more consistent with the human look we have in our world. Humans can also learn to use pyromancies, aka fire magic, regular magic, dark magic, and miracles, aka faith-related spells. Humans got the short end of the stick in the Dark Souls universe. After helping the gods fight the dragons, the gods found out the flame was going to end sometime later, which means the Age of Dark, aka Age of Humanity, would happen, dethroning their rule. So, when Gwyn offered himself to the fire to extend the Age of Fire itself, it in turn created the undead curse amongst humankind. Now there is no official lore that truly says how you get the undead curse, actively and randomly affected humans across the universe. However, some humans can voluntarily inflict themselves with this curse by being marked with something called the dark sign. By doing so, you are undead, but not in the sense of a generic brainless zombie. Yet. Each time you die, your body and soul regenerate at the last bonfire you interacted with. Why is that? Because remember, the first flame holds power over life, and death, and these bonfires retain a spiritual connection with that first flame. A proactive way of strengthening yourself to fend against the many trials and tribulations of this dark world is killing any living thing and harvesting their souls to make your own stronger. Which means at this point, many will be out to kill one another to just become proficient in one of many ways. Those that are in control as of now will also try and convince you to burn thy own soul at the first flame if you've become strong enough as a hero, which is up to your own perception at that point, so that the Age of Fire may reign. People affected with the dark sign, a visible brand on the body, would be massively deported to asylums for two major driving reasons. One, that there was a prophecy of an undead human hero that would fuel the flame and save the Age of Fire, and two, a majority of undead men would eventually become hollow and cause further distress across the land if kept unchecked. While the prospect of what seems like immortality is great on paper, the side effects are detrimental mentally and physically. Upon each death that brings you back to a bonfire, you lose part of your memory. Your body decays and mutilates further, to a point eventually your mind slowly dives into madness, becoming more akin to the generic zombie, but are able to wield weapons of all kinds, known as Dark Souls' Hollow. While your body is able to come back, it's your mind that dwindles, and without your own free will, can that really be considered being alive? These Hollows, much like the zombies of Dawn of the Dead, will flock to places and things they valued before becoming a decrepit mummy. Hollows will attack anything and everything that is not also a hollow relentlessly. Once a fully formed hollow has been slain, they cannot come back. Although in-game, hollows can come back, lore-wise, they cannot. If you find yourself dying frequently, a way of preventing your brain from degrading is by having such a strong sense of determination or a steadfast goal that your mind cannot decay while your body still rots further and further. Although, if you finally achieve your goal, you will fall victim to the affliction. A blacksmith in game still retains his sanity as his goal of doing his job well, and performing a never-ending duty like that could help in keeping you a person at heart. Although say you just wanted a trinket, and then you find the said trinket, you'll become a hollow soon after. A solution to reverting thyself to that of a fully alive human is by retrieving fragments of the Dark Soul that originally created humanity and burning it at a campfire, bestowing you with your full humanity back. The only problem is that these fragments are most likely kept within another person, creature, or demon, meaning it's kill or be killed to obtain such a coveted item. Stumbling across this is mostly out of the question as well. However, if you are not able to retrieve these fragments, your sense of will could wane at any given moment dependent on your circumstances. As the moment you lose hope or give up, your madness and hopelessness will take over and you will become one of these hollow. Once you have fully descended into the state, there is no turning back. Your thoughts and sense of self have been cast to the proverbial wind. You as an individual no longer exist. Now, if you're a dedicated gamer who knows every facet of combat on a keyboard or controller, you could just say what Cakeslayer would proclaim to me. Get good, lol. As since never dying would be the ultimate way of never becoming a hollow. But let's face it, many of us are not built or have the actual skills to dodge, roll, or fight to the degree that our in-game avatars do. If you could tell me you can maneuver and wield these heavy weapons, adorn these armors, and move effectively, and just avoid dying easily, you're basically one of those kids that thinks they could wreck shop in the military just because they're 15th prestige in Black Ops. It was the creation of humanity that triggered events that would possibly end the Age of Flame and lead to the Age of Dark. Now that the Age of Ancients was long over, kingdoms would be established across the world as the Age of Fire started. The advent of fire would continue to burn long after the dragon extinction, but as aeons passed, the central spark would begin to fade more and more, needing souls to fuel its worldly embers. If this flame were to be extinguished, then the world and all of reality would plunge into the Age of Dark, also known as the Age of Humanity. The gods did not like the idea of humanity ruling, so they did everything in their power to stop it. To prevent this potential Age of Dark, the Witch of Izalith attempted to recreate and copy the flame by her own burning-based witchcraft, mixed in with a powerful soul. However, this duplicitous act would end in complete failure, as this new ember would expand into what would be known as the Flame of Chaos. From this roaring heat came corruption that would transform the witch and her daughters into vile monsters that would be entombed in the bed of chaos. From this tree-like being came the root cause and consistent creation of the world's numerous demons. With this new army slowly festering outward, Gwyn gathered his armies once more to quell this new threat. They would find success in driving the demons back and shackling the bed of chaos to bind the demons from continuing their march. Gwyn and his accompanying knights, fearing the advent of fire's impending extinguishment, sought the guidance of the primordial serpent King Seeker Frampt. The creepy slug thing gave him the advice of sacrifice. Before setting out on his final quest, he appointed fragments of his Lord Soul to his most trusted allies and companions, the betraying dragon Seath and the four kings who ruled over the city of undead, empowering them all. In order to prevent the enclosing darkness that surrounded the flame, Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, offered his own soul to the flame so that it may burn for generations to come. For you see, souls are life, and life is fire. And for such a powerful soul to be cast in the flames would give it strength to burn on for the foreseeable future. With the fire raging, the knights that witnessed Gwyn's sacrifice were bathed in flame, with only their armor remaining, living as hollowed-out husks to wander and fight without regard for their enemies. Over time, another primordial serpent similar to Frampt, named Darkstalker Calf, approached the human kingdom of Ulasil. Sorry if I mispronounced some of these, much like the snake in the Garden of Eden, but with a lot less paradise and more dark, decrepit ambience. The serpent convinced the people to unearth the grave of what was supposedly an ancient human. The primordial human Manus would be resurrected due to convening actions, but this came at the cost of his sanity and drove him to madness. The population of Ulasil had all mutated beyond recognition and became mindless monsters. The abyss that housed Ulasil and a majority of mankind would soon see its borders widen and darkness thicken across the world under Manus's efforts as he attempted to retrieve his Boran pendant from his previous life. He was eventually defeated, and the Princess Dusk would remain in Ulasil. A child of Gwyn, called Gwendolyn, was eventually born and joined forces with King Seeker Frampt to shepherd humanity, with their countless undead and gigantic asylums holding the hope that one of these human beings would answer the call of fate, defeating the demons that protect it and fulfill a bunch of different quests that would wind up having the player character facing off against the evils and litany of dangers the world of Dark Souls has to offer. Now I know that the franchise has much more to its lore than what is simply read by the opening cinematic of the first game and what proceeds through that, but I'm not a Dark Souls channel, and we are here to go over why you wouldn't survive this scenario if it suddenly became a reality, and I feel like these key points would suffice. We just needed to give you some context to the universe and its origins before diving in so people that aren't completely knowledgeable of the franchise will just know a little bit better. But hey, someone will be in the comments saying, I thought this was a why you wouldn't survive video, not a lore video. We have to have some context, and we have to place the world of reality in a scenario where Dark Souls had taken its proportions of life, death, demons, and dragons. We will have to do some melding. Also keep in mind, we are covering mostly what was in the first game, and may expand to 2 and 3 in a future video, depending on how this performs. Starting with the short form of the Age of Ancients, where dragons will descend upon the earth, scorching the lands in hellfire by the thousands. The initial reign of fire will be devastating to the general population, as the dragons would aim to destroy mankind in their most densely populated areas. Fighting back is feasible, as they could easily be taken out with enough firepower, but the amount of carnage needed to trade a dragon's life for hundreds or even thousands of human lives would come at a great toll, as their sheer numbers would cause enough death and destruction to put a large dent in our world population. Any large-scale attacks brought on by nukes or warheads would only aid the dragon armies in destroying large metropolitan areas. Eventually, humanity could win against the dragons, but most likely with the aid and advent of the first flame burning into our reality. Now let's say the 4 Lord Souls of Dark Souls conjure near this flame, and 4 identical beings to those we have discussed come forth to fight back against the dragons. The combined powers of the rallying army of Gwen, the power of death and illness of Nito, the witches led by the Witch of Izalith, and most importantly, the furtive pygmy, would be able to vanquish the dragons. Due to this victory, humanity would be grateful to these new beings, and would coexist with them for a time. Since the pygmy created humanity in Dark Souls, we will say that the pygmy actually transformed humanity and gave them the abilities and dimorphism that humans experience in the games. All of mankind eventually having the chance of being branded with the dark sign, either at random or by one's will, being able to come back to life at the cost of one's humanity at bonfires, and everyone being able to wield a variety of spells. So not only will a majority of surviving human beings be able to wield firearms, they will also be able to whip fireballs and conjure magical destructive power at their own fingertips. Eventually, the war against the dragons would cease, and the Age of Fire would soon come forth, and all the same errors, judgments, and decisions made by the Lord Souls that greatly affected the world to its detriment. The dwindling of the First Flame would worry the Lord Souls and their power advantage over men. The mark of the Dark Sign would soon surface, and fully went into use once Gwyn offered himself to the First Flame, allowing the Age of Fire to continue while mankind, as a majority, would become the undead. The Witch of Izalith, panicking to keep the flame roaring, attempted to copy it and make the Flame of Chaos, which corrupted her and her children and spawned a litany of demons and monsters across the world, spurring the why you wouldn't survive aspect so far down the rabbit hole. These demons, possessed creatures, deadly beasts, and more would want nothing more than to wipe you out, no matter how many times it may take. Originating from what is now the bed of chaos, hellish spawns would scour the globe and ferment or take control of whatever their nearby environment would allow them to harness as a usable deadly beast or soldier, such as swamplands akin to that of the area near Blighttown that would create giant and horrific versions of animals like mosquitoes and leeches, which giant versions of these bloodsuckers don't really need much explanation, but have the added bonus of being able to poison you with their stored up blood and mucus. Crag spiders also wander the marsh upon their 3 jagged legs, being able to breathe fire as they hover around trying to bake you or impale your body. Giants known as infested barbarians carry around clubs to squash victims and have enough strength to lift boulders and chuck them great distances. Lakes can become homes to giant hydras, the Greek mythological 7-headed beast that can fire high-pressure water projectiles at you to pierce your flesh and attempt to swallow you whole. If you've seen Hercules, you know the method of its brutality, having multiple heads to strike down only for more fun to begin. While hollows can be varied dependent on the person they come from, they can also adapt or be transformed by their environment by using different methods of defense and attack, turning some hollows into infested ghouls, cannibalistic unarmored variants that stay in groups wielding blades and spears, or even attacking people with the very chewed up corpses they were just dining upon. Some hollows will become bucketheads and keep their distance as they use blow darts to fire darts that will inject toxins into your body that, if left untreated, will have you keeled over in minutes. Thinking of hiding out in the lush and discreet forest lands? Well, think again. Giant freaking cats are going to be rolling around like Sonic the Hedgehog, ready to tear you limb from limb. Frog rays hopping around and lashing you to bits with their quick tongue. 2-headed lizards will blend in with the shrubbery of their environment, only to attack with venomous spit and fangs. The plants themselves can come to life and also whip you into submission while reeling you in and crushing you to death. Great stone knights can make forests their resting place, staying long enough for algae and moss to adorn their rocky armor, and if you approach them too closely, will attack without restraint, by first slowing you down to a walking speed, and then eviscerating you with their mighty sword. Also, there are mushroom people that aren't too much of a threat, but I would not recommend trying to eat sentient mushrooms that can punch you. The great gray wolf Sith will also be wandering around as a giant doggo with a big-ass sword in its mouth, and man, can this pup cut with precision. Sewers may also fester forth hordes of gigantic rats of extremely poisonous nature. slimes upon the walls attempting to envelop you and either dissolving you alive or impaling you with spikes in its mass, and most mythically horrific basilisks that are able to run along the surface of water like Jesus, and outside of their deadly fighting capabilities, their sheer breath can turn you into solid stone if left unchecked. Now, if you're unlucky enough, one of your friendly neighborhood sewers may be even home to the Gaping Dragon, a four-legged, two-armed giant dragon with four wings and a stomach topped with a giant mouth with huge teeth. Being one of the last descendants of the dragons being corrupted from the emergence of life, it will use every extremity at its disposal to lash out at you heavily while spitting acid and grabbing at you to eat you alive. He also curses you upon your defeat, magnifying the hollowing effects of death and making your overall vitality only half as strong. You can reverse the effects as stated earlier, but procuring a purging stone will be 1 in a million to find, loot off a dead body, or buy off someone who is probably selling them at a high price on some, should I say, dark market. However generic it may seem, graveyards and crypts will also be a breeding ground of, well, death. Mostly heralded by necromancers, reanimating the shambling skeletons of the deceased, armies of these bony boys can wield a variety of weapons similar to Army of Darkness. Although in Dark Souls' case, beyond regular human skeletons, there are also giant skeletons with more sheer strength due to their size alone, and their gigantic curved swords, and some with longbows and arrows. Infants aren't out of the equation of the boneyard, as skeleton babies can quickly maneuver around at knee-high length to possibly lash at your joints to impede you and poison you in the process. Skeleton beasts, of which look like a cross between human and canine on all fours attacking like a feral animal, wheel skeletons that can attach themselves to spiked wheels that roll around and attempt to run you over, and honestly, a real son of a bitch to deal with in game. Bone towers will also construct themselves as stacks of bodies and bones into an almost worm-like being. Its various outgoing appendages can be used to spin around and strike innocents and use its bony girth to crush you. Some of these skeletons may be bound to their necromancer, and unless stricken down with a divine weapon, can come back to life infinitely until their own master is killed. All while fighting these boned up beauties, wisps will be floating about, ready to explode in a soul-fueled, fiery blaze if you draw too near. Pinwheel may also appear in a mass grave or well-known cemetery, being a powerful three-masked necromancer in a black robe and four rod-like arms with lanterns at the end of them, having stolen his power from Nito, commanding further corpses and skeletons to do his bidding while spewing flames and summon double-teamed clones to fight in his place. You'll have to fight a ton of him and his army just to take him down. Now, if you recall earlier, I brought up Seath the Scaleless, who was paramount in betraying the dragons and allowing us to win. Now, you might have to fight him, but after the war, he secluded himself in the Duke's archives, becoming insane and using his powers of sorcery to create hostile entities. Humans may try to invade these archives to learn more of his crystalline magic or prevent the numerous kidnappings of women traced to this area. Attempting to invade this place would be dangerous, as you will be going against hollowed knights and beings adorned with hardened crystals on their bodies and weapons that cause so much more severe damage and give them heavy resistance to all means of magic. Crystal golems will also be lumbering around to either flatten you with their size or smash the ground to produce crystal spikes to impale you from beneath your feet. The women kidnapped by these crystal meth heads will be morphed into creatures known as pisakas. Blind as a bat using sonar detection, these snake-bodied, tentacle-haired vixens will slither around and attempt to bind you with their jellyfish-like heads and stab you to death with their fangs. However, they are usually kept caged up and could be easily avoided if push came to shove. The most dangerous of these enemies within the archives are the channelers, using their magic to teleport around you and stab at thee with a powerful trident or shoot at thee with soul arrows from long distances. However, their most lethal ability is to perform a war dance that makes all their nearby crystal allies twice as fearsome, meaning they must be focused before anyone else, if you can handle the horde at the same time, that is. In the midst of all this is the behemoth moonlight butterfly, flying high above in its splendid beauty as it fires magical spears, homing explosive energy orbs, and basically a wide assortment of energy and light blasts to incinerate you, while smaller moonlight butterflies flutter about looking to do the same, but at a much weaker rate. Now, going back to the Abyss, considering the kingdom of Ulasil was a predominant kingdom for humans in Dark Souls, but not one in our world, we would have to see if the Abyss would appear in one or more of the most densely populated cities on the planet, like Bangladesh, Mumbai, or Manila. Those within the city could either seek to or accidentally resurrect Manus and thus spur the population into wild mutations and loss of their humanity rather quickly. These variations in mutations will of course make them hostile beings, like the most basic form of the Ulasil resident that bloats the head into a festering mess of red eyes, extending the person's arms with razor-sharp claws. They are quite fast in their pursuit, but can easily fall over at any point. With a wide variety of other mutants, these are what these wide populations would be subjected to and riddling the major cities with. Manus will also still remain, fathering over the Abyss, mutated into a beast man of extremely dark silhouette and a stretching, spike-ridden arm larger than the other, attempting to crush you with said arm or by devastating you with its carried catalyst. It can summon dark magic when desperate, shooting forth orbs of darkness at high speeds or creating dark rain above to shred you to pieces wherever you may go. In order to break this curse upon whatever city may be stricken by Manus's madness, militarized forces would have to invade the Abyss beneath. Attempting to breach the chasm of the Abyss will be met with the chained prisoner, adorned with balls and chains and a rather large horn on its head to attempt to impale people like a rhinoceros. Its many chains on its body will act as defenses against weaponry, but to a very small degree. Entering the Abyss, more of the Ulasil creatures will be scattered about, but more numerous and spine-chilling are the giant humanities, looking like the ghost Pokemon of Pokemon Tower, but without a Sylph Scope handy. They don't really attack unwary people, but if they intersect their phantom image with your body, can instantly start to wear down your framework at a very fast rate. Think of it as a jellyfish-like being that you can attack from afar, but merely touching it can lead to horrible results. Their sheer numbers in close spaces can prove to be deadly, as you may have the ammunition and stamina to have taken down a few, but will probably exhaust both by the time you even put a dent in their numbers. Much like we did with connecting Ulasil to a major city, the same could be intertwined with new Anor Londo. The four kings of Gwyn that ruled in whatever township they presided over would all meet their end against the dark, with their preceding knights transformed into dark wraiths. Hollowed versions of these battle-hardened warriors, they will have just as much proficiency in death as they did in life, but will also be armed with the Dark Hand, performing like androids 19 and 20, but instead of draining energy, the Dark Wraiths drain one's humanity at a very fast rate, able to turn you to a hollow themselves. It's not a far cry from seeing them as major threats that can turn people into the undead at an exponential rate, so the city in question may have been buried or been sealed off and then flooded to snuff the hazard they posed. Drowning people by the masses would prove to be counterproductive to humanity's front against the dark, as innocent lives that may have been caught in the water? The dead will come back in a number of ways because of this drowning, like a mass of souls, a blackened blob of flesh and putrid ooze clustered together by many of these damned souls, creating a giant face that can emanate a deadly spear from its mouth to pierce you, or it can crush you with its mass, or drench you in its vile purge to slow down your movements and burn you for the final kill. Ghosts will also wander the soaked underbelly, phasing through nearly any object as a cursed afterthought, wielding two knives to slit your throat at a whim, as they can go through any object, as they cannot be touched without the use of a cursed weapon, making them nigh invincible as they slice you to shreds without any retaliation. Some of these ghosts will go even further beyond, becoming banshees. Possibly from the anguish of mothers who lost their infants, they will wander around holding the ghost of their babies. Upon being approached, will shriek at a high decibel to live up to its name. They can conjure lightning bolts or may simply gut you on the spot. For some, seeing this sad sight of a mother wailing for her child may lead them to assist her, only to be utterly tricked and then wiped out. Strongholds may be constructed in various vantage points, maybe within forests reminiscent of Sen's fortress. Adorned with many precarious traps and pitfalls, they are populated by man-serpents, humanoid warriors with, well, snakes for heads that will fight like any other sword and shield wielding warrior, but have the capability to extend its neck to deeply stab at you with its elongated fangs. Similarly, serpent mages with the head of a cobra will be able to cast various destructive spells of lightning and poisonous mist, and will take their bite to the next level by trying to envelop a victim's head completely in its jaws before sinking in. Giants will also be within and outside this den of snakes doing grunt work of hauling boulders and whatnot. They can also be seen standing watch on the outer walls, chucking firebombs at trespassers, but can be clumsy in the direct combat. But it's easy to see how a giant could easily crush you if you got too close. At the epicenter is the giant iron golems, over 3 times the height of any adult human, powered by a core that was made using a bone of an ancient dragon. Having the experience of killing thousands of the undead with its powerful axe, while also being able to whip up cutting gusts of wind. Due to its sheer weight and girth, it could easily smush you underfoot or liquefy you in its iron grasp. Its purpose is to guard the way into Anor Londo. Connected by their proximity in Dark Souls, but not necessarily in this scenario, the city of Anor Londo would be a dimmed beacon amongst the darkness, a former seat of the power of the gods created by Lord Gwyn, abandoned by him once he sacrificed himself to the first flame, leaving only Gwyndolin to tend to its upkeep. This city would definitely be constructed in our world as a creation of these Lord Souls. Gwyndolin emulates an illusion of sunlight in the cityscape, as well as an illusion of his sister in order to trick the undead population into a more brighter environment in keeping the flame going. Although attacking the illusion of Gwyndolin's sister will cause this illusion to shatter, plunging Anor Londo into eternal darkness once more, entering this city can be met with fierce opposition, including the House of the Dead-like bat-winged demons attacking from the air above with pointed spears. On the ground below is a lineage of skilled knights ranging from sentinels of varying pedigree, silver knights, and even giant reptile-like fire-breathing gargoyle statues. If Gwendolyn is attacked or killed, the darkness will also spawn from Dark Moon soldiers, each of these warriors fighting in the stereotypical way that any battle-hardened knight would, but you know, more dark and shit. Bringing the meaning of Double Trouble, Dragonslayer Ornstein and Executioner Smough are guarding Anor Londo's central cathedral, with Ornstein as a trusted knight of Gwyn, armed head to toe in golden armor, armed with electrical capabilities within his helmet and spear that can cut even through boulder. His chunk of a companion, Executioner Smough, earned his title through his love of slaughter and cannibalism, as he wields a hammer that may or may not be overcompensating. He tends to use the bones of his victims as ingredients for meals. If one of these power bosses is killed in battle, the other will absorb their soul and retain their strongest qualities, ensuring that the two will never be a total singular threat, even after one's death, as they share each other's power. As mentioned before, if provoked, Dark Sun Gwyndolin can give quite a fight. Born with a talent for magic and a spiritual connection to the moon, he leads the Covenant Blade of Dark Moon. His mastery of illusions allows him to manipulate the environment in combat, creating an endless hallway so that he can more easily shoot at you with arrows, homing magic orbs, all of which that can phase through walls at any given moment, and teleporting at will to avoid damage. Being the son of Gwyn, he is no laughing matter in fighting prowess. Within Anor Londo are specific paintings that lead to the painted world of Ariamis, like Super Mario 64, are guarded by painting guardians, but they can be taken out with ease if given the chance. And also keep in mind, some dangerous enemies don't need specific areas to be created in. Some will just exist sporadically no matter where you may roam. Man-eater shells looking like a rejected clam mutant from Bikini Bottom, carrying human skulls within its nigh bulletproof shell of a mouth, making sure to clamp down hard enough on you to add your skull to its pearl-like collection. Or even Titanite demons, spawned from an unnamed blacksmith's multiple Titanite shards, giving life to headless warriors. Even with the brief respite that may come with promising container-like chests, or maybe even lockers or coolers in a world that may have something valuable in them, can be a death sentence, as the classic mimic lures you into opening it only to drag you in its gaping maw and eat you alive. Avoiding a fate as a box's snack will cause it to grow a very brittle-looking humanoid body to pursue you, to grab you, and go back for a second helping of human head hors d'oeuvres. Drakes, being pretty damn similar to the dragons that were wiped out after the Age of Ancients, will occasionally appear, but are very small and very blue in comparison. While the generic dragon spits hot fire, these blue little devils have a more shocking breath, shooting electrified air that can course through your body instantaneously, while also leaving the ground around it at a high voltage. Unless you are planning to wear a lot of rubber, don't expect to survive an encounter with them anytime soon. Now what's the story of fake dragons without hollowed knights? The Black Knights will also aimlessly wander the continents long after having their armor scorched black against demons of chaos and losing their leader Gwyn. Considering their former affiliation and league with Gwyn himself, they are all skilled in combat with just about any hand-to-hand weapon you can think of, while also being resistant to fire. A fight against them will exhaust you in terms of health, stamina, and the sturdiness of your supplies. As time would go on, thousands would perish over and over, but that's only if they have the dark sign upon their body. If not, they would have died once, become hollow, and that's it, or just become a flat-out dead body that never returned. Now, with a large portion of those dying with the dark sign upon their body, they would most likely be sent to bonfires that reside inside asylums, where they will slowly wither away as prisoners with no hope of parole, unless you are the chosen one, which, spoiler alert, is probably not gonna happen. Breaking out might seem like a good idea until you are face to face, probably weaponless, against the extra thick asylum demons who will crush you with methods of its giant ass or its gargantuan club. People consistently dying, being sent to imprisonment upon reincarnation or into further confrontation or hiding, and eventually losing hope, would make the world's hollow population continue exponentially. How can we, as a species, combat this? What would we need to fight to slow down the rate of conversion? Well, demons are a pretty viable option to try and wipe out. The world's governments, militaries, and organizations would pinpoint the origin of the demons roaming the land to the bed of chaos, and would attempt to use much firepower and manpower to try and destroy it. The Witch of Izalith, that became this bed, would be knowledgeable of the firepower wielded by current humanity, and, as the bed of chaos, would take extra precautions to protect itself from napalm strikes, nuclear attacks, and much, much more. She would be prepared, although that would be dependent on how much of said munitions would even be available right after the Age of Ancients. So elite operations teams would be most likely deployed to take out the source of the demonic uprising by foot or by vehicle. The threats posed here in the bed of chaos would be many. Now within here there are going to be endless pits of lava you can accidentally stumble into and melt away Terminator style, so keep your footing and don't get knocked in by the denizens of this pit. If you have severe entomophobia, you'll probably want to avoid the bed of chaos more so than other locations, with giant insects like the burrowing rockworm coming out of walls and ceilings, naturally equipped with chop-ready pincers, spewing acid from its body across distances to corrode your weapons and armor, and constrict you so it may easily eat you alive. Think of that scene in the 2005 version of King Kong where all the insects are coming everywhere. Yeah, you're gonna be one of those guys that's not getting out alive. You're just gonna be insect shit. Egg carriers are people infected by a parasite, and much like mother spiders, will slowly meander about on all fours, with tons of parasitic eggs on its back. They are passive until provoked, latching onto you and releasing its forced offspring on you to infect you with the parasite. If these carriers are killed, the eggs upon their stern will burst open, unleashing many vile maggots to swarm you. Being infected by these parasites will cause your head to itch uncontrollably until eventually an egg-like growth will envelop your entire cranium, siphoning half of all the souls you have accumulated, but also giving you the ability to attack with a maggot born from your own head. If you're comfortable with having a maggot living inside your head, I don't know the long-term medical ramifications of having a maggot in your brain, but I don't think it's good. You can live with it, but long-term effects may wane on your body. You can nullify this infection by using an egg vermifuge. But as always, finding one of these egg vermifuges to cure this parasite from your body will be quite an issue. Now, Chaos Eaters also exist, being another example of horrible creation. I mean, look at it! I see what they did there! It can grab you with one or more of its multiple tentacle-like appendages to drag you to its upwards-facing mouth to shred you like a blender. Staying far away from it may also provoke it to spit acid at you, because why wouldn't it try to melt you alive for a liquid diet? It wouldn't be the spawning ground of demon spawn without demons protecting it, right? You have stone demons resembling dragon-like gargoyles, floating slowly and breathing fire till the day they crumble. In a half-off sale, the bounding demon of Izalith is another striking image of a dragon, but just the lower half, with two big-ass legs and an even thicker tail, wading through pools of lava. It would be easy to see how they could stomp you and break every bone in your body with their tails, or knock you into the lava itself. Many bosses will also seek to protect their spawning grounds, giving us quite a struggle and trips back to the campfires. The giant Minotaur-esque Taurus demon will yield a great axe to cut hordes of enemies with ease, and be able to jump great heights of up to 3 stories high. They have similar, smaller cohorts that do about the same thing, but are more easily taken out, if you have the fighting prowess, that is. The Capra demon is twice the size of humans with a goat skull for a head, incorporating sharp claws and even sharper machetes, while also reining in undead dogs to answer to its beck and call. Now, if you're not torn apart by its Cujo level canines or turned into mincemeat by its weapons, it can jump great distances to close the gap and make it happen anyways. Just like the Taurus demon, there are smaller versions of the Capra that do similar methods of murder. Returning to a fear of insects, the centipede demons crawling around the walls of scorching hot rooms descending into pools of lava give for a red-hot battle. Looking like a botched fusion of multiple giant centipedes, their resistance to extreme heat can make attacking them that much more difficult, as it extends one of its head-like arms to crush you against a wall or floor while shooting magma at you at high speeds. While a fair fight in Dark Souls, the amount of lava splashing around would be enough to incapacitate you before becoming food to the beast. Coming in as a hotter version of the Asylum demon, wardening over the bed and not a prison, the Demon Fire Sage is bathed in flames and chooses to wield a giant spear instead to gouge you entirely, and its ass slamming can spurt out shockwaves to stumble and hurt you. The family reunion starts with the Chaos Witch Kulag, a corrupted daughter of the Witch of Izalith, morphed into a sexy top but a giant spider bottom, each leg tipped with tapered talons, the body engulfed in a blaze that will consume anything nearby, and brandishing a sword of pure flame that flings cinders everywhere it's swung at. Its grotesque mouth will burst out balls of lava to riddle the ground in melting liquid, while also extending its length to hit its prey with ease. A seductive arachnid of this nature could end your life in any of these ways, especially if you get distracted by its pubes. In the same family tree, the only son of the Witch of Izalith, also corrupted by the Flame of Chaos, reconstructed as the Ceaseless Discharge. He is much more deformed than his sibling, although will act dormant till you disturb the corpse of his dead sister. Its sheer size, with its many tendrils, are another open and shut case of effortless homicide. Mix that with a bit of fire and brimstone, hardened flesh, and the fact that it's beyond reach unless you have projectiles, only to be harmed while it keeps its appendages in your range after each attack, which doesn't really make sense in a logistical sense. Why would it keep its hand there for you to slash at it? Side note, while we can easily dodge and attack these bosses while they recuperate to get in chip damage for gameplay, no hit run purposes, let's keep in mind that if they were real, they would probably not give you the time to stab at them after each attack. They would all be relentless in their offense until you were on the floor disintegrating to your last bonfire. Many people tend to think these creatures will act only as much as gameplay balance will allow, but there aren't game developers forcing them to slow down often, and rolling won't give you immunity to hits that you know would be life-threatening if it even clipped through you in reality. There's no such thing as clipping in real life, guys. Also remember, you have to have the power of will and hope to complete a goal to continue to come back without becoming, eventually, a mindless hollow. Now finally getting to the source of it all, now seen as a giant tree-like monster with its roots deeply seated throughout her room, that will have a glowing silhouette appear momentarily once you attack its glowing roots, as she produces jagged armed fire scythes coming from its topside to cut you down as it slowly destroys the floor beneath you. As you slowly whittle away its glowing roots, it will attack with all-encompassing spheres and pillars of lava, and eventually panic, and summon numerous fiery scythe attacks to cut you in half. If you find your way to the center of the, dare I say, chaos, buried in troves of roots is a lowly insect-like creature. If you take too long cutting through the layered roots to its dwelling, you will probably be drowned in fire and become a cremation before declaring victory. Killing the grotesque bug will finally quell the bed and ends its chaos there on out. Although over time the bed of chaos would reincarnate as other beings aeons down the road, but for now it would put a stop to the creation of further demons. Like I said, for a time. But taking this out with the amount of retaliation in its realm and the bed itself would prove to be a repetitive death sentence for many. And of course, of the 4 Lord Souls that started it all, humanity may have to come face to face with 2 or more of its powerful quintet, like Nito, a living manifestation of illness and death, becoming a mass of skeletons cloaked in a black shroud. Slumbering in a tomb, even his presence emanates an aura of death. If intentionally or accidentally awoken, will unsheath his greatsword that can expel aura that will build up toxins in your body if it makes even slight contact, while commanding skeletal armies to back him up in combat and take you down. And of course, Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder, despite offering himself to the fire, can emerge as a hollowed husk of his former self, guarding the first flame. While no longer being able to conjure lightning, his sword of flame and quick reflexes make for an almost undodgeable flurry of attacks. If you are able to kill what was once the strongest being / leader in existence, his soul will protrude forth, giving you untold amounts of spiritual energy, enough to refuel the first flame. But if you were to try to refuel the first flame, it would be at the cost of your own life, if you so choose. Doing so would potentially end this madness, but you would fade from existence and become yet another hollowed guardian of this flame for ages to come. Or don't and be powerful as hell while people hear of your accomplishment and relentlessly hunt you down for your fancy new Lord Soul. Your choice. So, with all of this in mind, yes, the gap between the end of the Age of Ancients and the middle of the Age of Fire would give humanity plenty of time to become accustomed to the methods of revival for those individuals marked with the dark sign, learning what it means to become a hollow and how to avoid it, and mastering the many forms of magic, weapons, and apparel they can use to attack with, defend themselves with, and give themselves immunity and cures to counteract the veritable dangers everywhere from the environment to the many enemies of the world. Gathering materials to create weapons and armor worthy and strong enough to quell the bosses of this new world would be a lot harder than it seems, and finding beings that can utilize these materials to even craft them would be even harder. Finding a central hub area where everything conveniently is at your disposal is probably also going to be out of the question, because, like I said, it's not going to be a game anymore. This is real life now, and you are not the main character in real life. Covenants will crop up, becoming deciding factions that you can either side with or fight to the death against. And in most cases, those are the only 2 extremes that will occur. Covenants will have certain perks they offer to their new members. However, your actions will also be under heavy scrutiny by their strict rules. Wanting to separate from these covenants can only be achieved by either betraying them outright or by convening with Oswald, the Pardoner, or somebody of that similar nature, which betraying will have your former faction out to get you with their skilled and plentiful members, since by nature, a majority of people tend to take sides and stick to these teams to their dying breath, even if they may or may not be in the wrong. I mean, the only definitive method of becoming stronger in this world is to continuously kill others, constantly, while trying to stay alive long enough to use their souls to strengthen yourself and your weapons and magic. But becoming stronger against enemies in this world is not an easy task by any degree. Don't even pretend. The sheer amount of demons, mutated animals and beasts, generic RPG monsters, dragons and bosses scattered around that can kill you with ease, making any progression as an individual nigh impossible. Of course, everyone can come back at their pre-designated bonfires, but of course at the further and further decaying cost of their humanity. And that's if they have the dark sign on them. The people around you most likely will lose hope or sight of their goal, becoming hollow within a very reasonably short amount of time, creating further hordes of mindless but weapon-proficient undead. Any regular man would probably have been killed during the Age of Ancients, but those that survived would probably not last long soon into the Age of Fire. Learning to master magic, crossbows, and melee weaponry would be strenuous for the common man, but it will be achievable for those that put their mind and body into it. And those certain individuals will have their humanity remain intact despite a decrepit-looking body. Drinking from your Estus flask at opportune times and finding the relief of other bonfires may be difficult in the chaos of Dark Souls' hellish landscape. You never know when any various traps, pitfalls, or ambushes may happen at any given moment that will snuff you out to your last bonfire again, The sheer mindfucking that comes with dying over and over again, repeating a painful death as you see your body slowly wither away each time, will wane on your conscience. And that is the main focus. If you allow your mind to slip and become hollow, you're technically alive, but without your humanity. Can you really be considered a living human being or just a hollow shell of yourself? I know a lot of depressed people are probably going to say the latter. But if you feel like you can, go right ahead, friends. But the chances of your survival, realistically, are 0 to none. Otz did a no-hit run of Dark Souls, and I asked him, and he said he even doubts his abilities to fight any number of enemies face to face.